Hollywood is an industry obsessed with being seen, but the greatest actor in its history built his entire legacy by disappearing, not from the screen, from the performance. For Daniel Day-Lewis, acting was never about memorizing lines or hitting emotional beats. It was about rebuilding everything. And that's what makes Daniel Day-Lewis so difficult to explain. If perfection in acting ever had a face, many believe it looked like Daniel Day-Lewis. But don't take my word for it, I'm going to show you. Most actors spend their careers trying to stay visible. Daniel Day-Lewis seemed almost uninterested in being seen. In an industry built on constant output, he built a career on absence. Sometimes 4 years between films, sometimes 5. Not because the offers stopped coming, but because he simply refused to show up unless something in him demanded it.
I exercise a rare privilege, which is that I work when I feel a compelling need to do that work, and when I don't, I do other things.
While other actors were chasing relevance, he was chasing something closer to obsession, a single role studied for months, sometimes years, before a single scene was shot. He has appeared in fewer than 25 films across 5 decades. Compare that to actors who release 2, sometimes 3 films a year. And yet, 3 Academy Awards for Best Actor. More than any man in history. Numbers like that raise an obvious question. What is he actually doing differently? To understand this, you have to understand a distinction most people never think about. Most actors show you the character. You watch them. You know it's a performance. And that's fine, that's the craft. Great actors make you believe the character. For 2 hours, you forget the camera. You forget the script. You're simply inside the story. But Daniel Day-Lewis does something else. He makes the actor disappear. Not the character on top of the actor underneath the character. There's no version of Daniel Day-Lewis waiting behind Daniel Plainview, no trace of him left behind Bill the Butcher, no familiar mannerism that slips through when Abraham Lincoln speaks. Most performances are built, his field discovered, as if the character already existed and he simply found a way in. And that difference between showing, believing, and disappearing is where this story really begins. That's the theory. Now let me show you what perfection actually looks like. In My Left Foot, he plays Christy Brown, a real man born with cerebral palsy who could control only one part of his body, his left foot.
What do you think you're doing, Mom?
The question here isn't, can an actor play a disability? It's harder than that. Can an actor make physical limitations feel completely real without turning it into a spectacle? To prove this, I have to show you something. In the dinner scene, Christy discovers that the woman he loves is engaged to someone else, and here you can see how he suddenly becomes intense in that moment. The way he starts sweating, the way he talks after hearing that she's engaged.
I'm glad you taught me how to speak, so I could say that finally.
The way he drinks the wine one after another, and when the wine is taken away from him, look at how he stays completely inside the character. He makes you feel his pain by repeatedly banging his head against the table and pulling at the tablecloth. Everything stays trapped inside a body that refuses to cooperate. That's what makes the scene so painful. And then there's the detail that makes the illusion even harder to break, his left foot. Look closely at this scene. Christy is building a room with his mother, and he is helping her while they build it. And the way he holds that mason's trowel, you can see how he is only using his left foot and how accurately he is doing it. That looks like a real disabled person doing it. And in the same way, Christy is painting here. You can see how he is painting with only his left foot. That's the detail most people never notice. And I also believe that the hardest part of acting is this. You have to stay inside a difficult character like this and still make the audience feel the character's pain and emotion. And Daniel Day-Lewis understood this perfectly. And to achieve these kinds of minor emotions, Day-Lewis didn't just act like the character. He properly lived inside the character. That's why, while watching the movie, we never felt like an actor was performing. And on top of all of this, for the entire shoot he stayed in a wheelchair, on set, off set. It didn't matter. Crew members fed him because, in his mind, Christy couldn't feed himself.
And he came to visit him on the set to have lunch. And Daniel wouldn't come out of character. and he kept asking him to give him some food in his mouth.
Weeks passed with his body locked into the same position until 2 ribs finally cracked.
He broke 2 ribs during the shoot, as far as I remember, just from being crunched up all the time. But he never complained.
And these kinds of efforts are what eventually earned him his first Oscar. Now look at the transformation from Christie to Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York. This transformation alone tells you the whole story of how this actor puts hard work into his roles. And the question is, can an antagonist become more memorable than the protagonist? Leonardo DiCaprio is the hero of this film, but ask anyone who's seen it who they remember first, and the answer is almost always Bill the Butcher. Watch the knife-throwing act. Bill calls Jenny into the act like it's a game. It isn't. Knife after knife lands closer than the last, pinning her scarf to the wall, knocking a locket from her hands before it even touches the ground, skimming so close to her scalp that a fraction of an inch would have changed everything. Then the last knife finally draws blood, a thin line at Jenny's throat. And that's the exact second Amsterdam can't stay still anymore. The first time I watched this scene, I reacted exactly like Amsterdam did, flinching at every single throw, before my brain had time to remind me it was a movie. And then there is the poor rabbit scene. Bill is telling to punish the man who killed this rabbit, and then, while crying, he suddenly reacts in a way where one moment he is genuinely sad, and the very next moment it's like nothing even happened.
To punish the person who's responsible for murdering this poor little rabbit. Is that understood?
Honestly, after watching this film, I became a fan of the villain. And apart from this, there are so many scenes where you can see him brutally cutting meat, and the brutality of his character can be seen in the way he talks and carries himself. Bill the Butcher is one of Daniel Day-Lewis's top performances. For this role, he trained with real butchers to achieve the character. And to learn how to throw knives, he even trained at a circus. And Day-Lewis is the kind of actor who wants perfection in his roles. He wants the audience to forget that they are watching an actor. Instead, he wants the audience to feel like the character has come straight out of the story and is playing himself. And you can see the proof of his perfection in almost any of his movies. Watch any of them, and every single time, what you see is a different person entirely. Never Daniel Day-Lewis. Which brings us to There Will Be Blood. He didn't go through some huge physical transformation for this role, but the impact he created through his acting, brilliant. The way he speaks, the growl in his voice, the way he delivers his words, his expressions when he speaks. Too good. Let me show you a scene where he suffers humiliation in a church simply for money. The church confession scene. Eli forces him to say it out loud, in front of everyone. I am a sinner. I abandoned my son.
Louder, Daniel! I am a sinner!
I am a sinner.
I have abandoned my child. Say it.
I abandoned my child.
Say it louder. Say it louder.
I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my boy!
Watch his face while he says it. You can see the humiliation, but you can also see that he's only tolerating it for money. And underneath the shame, there's a hatred for Eli so precise, it doesn't need a single extra word. And then the milkshake scene. You've probably heard the line, even if you haven't seen the film. I drink your milkshake.
Across the room and starts to drink your milkshake. I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Drunk and completely consumed by the moment, he finally gets his revenge on Eli for every humiliation before it. The madness in Daniel Plainview.
Did you think your song and dance and your superstition would help you, Eli?
And the way Day-Lewis delivers every single word of it is nothing short of iconic. The oil explosion scene where an explosion happens and oil finally comes out of the ground. His son is injured in the explosion, but he doesn't even care about his son. Instead, there is terrifying happiness on his face because he knows he is becoming rich. And that's the kind of character who can go to any limit for money. And Daniel Day-Lewis plays that character brilliantly. For this performance, he also won his second Oscar. And speaking of Oscars, Daniel had another excellent performance in a movie called Lincoln, where he played Abraham Lincoln. And with such intelligent acting, he won his third Oscar for this movie as well.
And the Oscar goes to Daniel Day-Lewis.
Just imagine how talented this man was. He won 3 Oscars. 3! While here in Hollywood, actors can spend their entire careers desperately waiting for even 1 Oscar. And there are so many more performances worth talking about. But if I covered all of them, this video would never end. But you don't need all of them. You've already seen enough to answer the question we started with. What actually separates Daniel Day-Lewis from everyone else? Not the awards, not the rarity. Those were never the real answer, just the evidence. The real answer is simpler and somehow harder to accept. Most actors spend their careers building a toolkit, an accent here, a physical habit there, techniques they can reach for whenever a role demands it. Day-Lewis never built a toolkit. Every single time, he started over, from nothing. As if the last performance had never happened, and none of what he'd learned was allowed to help him this time. That's the part that doesn't quite make sense, until you realize it's the entire point, because a toolkit is something you use, and he was never interested in using anything. Go back to what we said earlier, that most actors show you the character, the great ones make you believe it, and he does something else entirely. He makes the actor disappear. Now you've seen what that actually costs, what it actually looks like, scene by scene, role by role. Absence between films wasn't him being distant. It was him making room, emptying himself out completely so someone else could move in, and maybe that's the only honest way to describe perfection like this.